Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Kristen Welker. We begin with breaking news out of Providence, where we're expecting an update at any moment on the investigation into the deadly shooting on the Brown University campus that killed 2 students and injured 9 others this weekend. It comes as the manhunt for the killer enters its 5th day, with law enforcement yet to identify any suspect. Providence police today releasing images of a person they're trying to identify and speak with, who they say was in proximity of a person of interest they're seeking. It comes after police released enhanced video late yesterday. Francis joins me from Providence, and also with me is NBC News Chief Justice and National Affairs Correspondent Kelly O'Donnell. Marquis, let me start with you. This manhunt now entering its 5th day. Talk about what those who are on the campus are telling you. Is it fear? Is it frustration? Is it a combination of both? What are folks telling you?
Absolutely, Kristen. Fear, anxiety, frustration, and now moving towards anger. We know when this shooting happened last Saturday. We also know where, in the building just behind me, but we still have no video of what exactly happened. Of course, we know there's this person of interest that law enforcement is looking for, but we have no video of them entering or exiting the building. And as you noted, law enforcement is now doubling down and pleading with the public for their help in this investigation, sending out that image today of a person they'd like to talk to who was in the proximity of this person of interest. That enhanced video just yesterday, but still they are asking for more help from the public. Yesterday at a presser, we learned that they're following 200 credible tips, and they're hoping those can help them get to more progress in this investigation. But of course, time is of the essence. As you noted, day 5 of this investigation, and people that I've talked to here, the ones who are still left on campus, there's a growing sense of worry and really doubt with whether law enforcement actually can solve this case. I talked to a grad student earlier who did not want to appear on camera, but she said she has an overall feeling of a nightmare entering day 5 now. She's not left the campus yet because she has to travel far, and she's waiting for her flight at the end of this week. But right now there's a heavy feeling, there's a fearful and anxious feeling because someone is still at large, and now anger and frustration. Kristen?
Marquis, thank you so much for that. It is hard to imagine what those students are going through, given that this person is still on the loose. Kelly, let me turn to you, because authorities releasing this image of a person who is in the proximity of the person of interest that they are seeking. What can you tell us about this person that they're trying to talk to? And we can see his face, we should note.
Well, with all the frustration that people are rightly feeling around Brown University, 5 days in the span of an investigation tells us something about the fact that those who are closest to the alleged gunman, not this image, but the one that they say is the suspect, have apparently not come forward yet. And we have seen in other cases where someone who knows the person, related to the person and so forth, comes forward. Absent that, they are now looking at this proximity person, as I would describe it. Another individual seen on video near the route that the suspect, the person of interest, again, we have to be careful what we refer to people as here, but they want to find out who is this person, because does this person have any direct knowledge of that other figure who authorities said was casing the area? Is this an acquaintance? Is this a friend? Is this someone who was a helper? Or simply someone living his own life, unrelated, but using the same pathway, who might remember a detail, who might have had a chance conversation? This person is not suspected of any wrongdoing. They are hoping to locate this individual to have another pathway of information. Part of the challenge here is without a clear facial image, that makes it very difficult for authorities to get the kind of help they're looking for. Other tools that they might have at their disposal, this sort of concentric rings of seeking doorway cameras and company surveillance, and obviously the cameras that are part of the university. They've been trying to piece together information.
Kelly, I'm going to have to interrupt you because this press conference is about to get underway in Providence, Rhode Island. Here's the mayor. Let's take a listen.
Welcome back to our daily briefing. I want to start by just acknowledging how the residents of Providence and the students and campus community at Brown are still feeling restless and eager for an arrest. And we understand and share that feeling. We are also eager for an arrest. The investigation is well underway, and we'll hear an update in just a second from Colonel Perez and Attorney General Noronha. But I want to reemphasize that in the Providence community and with the governor's help, really in the broader Providence community, we have tightened security and we have neighbors looking out for one another, and we will get through this. I know our city, and we are a resilient community, and we are a city that will support one another as we move forward in this scary time. Just because you're feeling unsafe doesn't mean that that's invalid. We know that that's real, but we are doing everything we can to both advance this investigation, but also to provide the support necessary as we move forward and take the first steps together that we need to, as a city, to start to recognize that kids need to go to school and people need to go to work, and we appreciate the courage and sometimes even tentative steps forward that we're taking as we start to move forward as a community. At this time, I'd like to introduce Colonel Oscar Perez, who will give an update on the investigation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon. We can please show the photo that we released earlier today. Okay. So we have released this enhanced photo earlier today, and I want to be clear that this is a person that we would like to speak with. We truly believe, based on the video footage that we have been watching for a few days, they may have relevant information to the investigation. So we're asking the public that you can help us identify who this individual is, as well as the individual themselves sees their picture, to please contact the police department. As far as one thing that I want to mention, I want to urge you, the public, not to rely on or circulate AI-generated images that are currently being shared on social media, as they're not verified or credible. As well, the updates and information that you're getting will be provided exclusively through this department's official channels. I want to make sure that we make that happen, and please notify the public to make sure that that occurs. I would also like to clarify and show a map. Please, if you can play the map. So the map here that you see is actually a map of the area that we have been intensively walking on those streets, canvassing the area. So as you see the blue image, yesterday I mentioned that we need the public's assistance to check their camera assistance or any sort of video that you may have that could be helpful to us, that you, as you're watching it or as you're reviewing it, you feel there may be something that we can use. Please notify us. And if you need any help with that, viewing those videos, please also call us. We can come over and help you. The green area that's color, that's when we have confirmed where the subject was prior to the shooting. The red areas, we have also confirmed that that's the immediate area where he left after the shooting. And so this is the map that actually we have so far. We've walked it all. We're still actively investigating, and we're still actively having agents, Providence police officers, members of the state police. There's about 9 federal agencies that are assisting us with this investigation, adding the state police as well as the Providence police and other municipalities. Again, I would like to reiterate, if you have any tips, please call the 272-3121 or the FBI link at fbi.gov/Brown University shooting. Thank you.
Attorney General Peter Nerona for an update. Okay. Thank you, General. One additional update from me, and then we'll be happy to take your questions. First, I want to just take a moment to recognize and honor the memory of Ella Cook and Muhammad Aziz Umarzakov, who are the 2 deceased victims from this tragedy, and update you on the status of the survivors. Yesterday, we mentioned that 1 individual had been discharged. I'm happy to report that another individual has been discharged today. That leaves 1 survivor in critical but stable condition and 5 in stable conditions. The parents that I spoke with today all reported that their kids were improving. So this is a happy announcement. But I know the entire Providence community, the entire state of Rhode Island, the governor and I were together at a memorial service last night, mourn the loss and offer our most sincere condolences to the Cook and Umerzakov families. Following up on a note that the Colonel made with respect to AI-generated images and other misinformation, we have created an online folder with all of the video and images that have been released. And we encourage both members of the press, but also members of the community. We know lots of people are sharing information, and we appreciate that. We think that will help with this investigation. But we encourage them to download and share the videos and photos from the website that has been created so that you can ensure that you're sharing an accurate and verified photo and video. That website is now live. It is providenceri.gov/tips, T-I-P-S. providenceri.gov/tips is an online file folder that has the videos and photos that have been released to date, and it will be updated as we progress. There's been lots of conversation up here about the heroic work of the hundreds of law enforcement professionals who remain hard at work 24 hours a day and who are, in fact, making progress. I want to close with one additional thank you tonight. All of those tip line calls are coming into the city's telecommunications department, the same folks who answer the 911 calls, and they too have been working tirelessly. And I want to thank the men and women at dispatch and at telecommunications for their diligence. Everyone in the city of Providence truly has a role to play in this investigation, and we're grateful for their assistance. We'll take your questions. John.
Colonel, I have a question for Colonel Burke regarding the map. As he's walking around, I want to establish actually, what's the earliest that this person of interest emerges? I believe you had said Saturday morning at 10:30, but then someone else said maybe a couple days earlier. And I recognize that it fluctuates and this is evolving. But as of right now, what's the earliest that this individual, to your knowledge, shows up on camera?
About 10:30 a.m. on the date of this tragic incident. However, so like anything else, I also mentioned yesterday that they do case the areas. They do a lot of prior checking for their crime, and so we truly believe that it could be that possibly it was there prior as well. And so we want to make sure that we don't miss anything. And so that's why we're asking the public to help us to ensure within that map area that I mentioned, with the borders between Wickeden, Brook, all those areas, Gano, that if you have a camera system, reach out to us.
I was along Street, Gano today. Tremendous number of federal officials literally going door to door. Would you just how would you describe? I mean, it just seems that this is probably right now the most massive, intensive manhunt going on in the world.
I think I agree with you on that, John, and definitely commend the men of the men, women, obviously, and all our federal partners. It's a lot of work, and it's intense, as you stated. It takes a lot to be able to knock on doors, see videos. There's terabytes of videos that you have to look, and I mentioned it yesterday. We're looking for a moment that takes almost less than a second, and if you miss it, you're missing something that could be critical and important for us to use. And so, yes, it's definitely intense, and I believe that is probably the most intense investigation going on right now in this nation.
Colonel, the second person that you want to talk to, can you drill down at all on any interactions that you believe he may have had with the main person of interest? Do you believe he talked to him? How close was he to him? Any interactions? What can you tell us?
So yeah, we have video footage of that determines to us and the detectives that can tell that this person was in the vicinity where the subject of interest was that we wanted that we actually have an interest on. Close enough that we feel that we need to speak with them to find out what because videos don't speak. If you think about it, I wish the video could speak, and then I'll have the answers that we need to, so that we can continue on this investigation. So we're trying to find out exactly what it is, and that's why we need to speak with them. Please.
Well, does this person, this new individual, have anything to do with why the person of interest was seen running in the surveillance footage?
Again, I wish the videos could speak. We're trying to get those answers.
And have you found any items of interest during your search, specifically clothing?
Nothing as we speak, no.
Up front here.
Who among law enforcement or other first responders was first on the scene that day, and who came next?
So Brown University was on scene, and then immediately the Providence Police Department within minutes was there.
Back there, the green jacket.
You recently released a video from 216 on the day of the shooting, where we see the person of interest come into contact or near another person. Is that the moment that you think this new person and the person of interest might have come close?
That's correct. It's around the area of Benevolent and Cook.
So behind the Rhode Island Historical Society, that corner of George.
Right near that area, correct.
And you had some searches going on in North Attleboro today. Is that connected at all to this case?
I can confirm we're all over the place. If a tip comes in and he needs us to go down to Connecticut, we're going down to Connecticut. If a tip comes in and tells us that we got to go to Boston, we're going to Boston.
Right there in the middle, the green jacket. Go ahead.
Is it possible that the second person could become a person of interest?
All we know is that that person was in the vicinity of the subject that we have an interest on, and we want to speak with them.
Listen,
En
go ahead.
español, si nos puede contar, Jefe Pérez, esta persona que busca identificar esa interacción, en qué área sucedió y qué pide de la comunidad.
Yes, so pretty much the question is just, if we can explain in Spanish exactly why we're looking for this individual, or why do we want to speak with them. So, esta persona verdaderamente es alguien que nosotros tenemos un interés de hablar con ellos porque estaba en la área inmediata donde este individuo estaba. Entonces queremos saber más de por qué estaba ahí para explicar la razón y qué interacción hubo.
¿Tienen algún indicativo de
And you've been listening to a press conference out of Providence, Rhode Island, officials updating the public on the ongoing manhunt to find the person responsible for killing 2 students at Brown University. The mayor saying we are doing everything we can to advance this investigation, releasing an image of a person who authorities say was in close proximity to the person of interest. They want to talk to the person in this image. They believe he was in close enough proximity to the person of interest that he may be able to shed some key details on this case. Let's go back to Kelly O'Donnell, who's been watching this press conference along with us. Kelly, what were your key takeaways and the fact that the shooter is still at large?
Well, certainly for the Providence community and the people in the close proximity, having a daily press conference where there can be even incremental updates has a value. There is nothing that stood out beyond that to me. This investigation is being run at the local level. Federal resources have been provided, but they are not in charge. There is not anything known about this crime that would make it a federal offense at this point. Therefore, it is being handled at the local level. And they've really hit some speed bumps along the way. Clearly, a lot of effort is going into it, a lot of manpower from the enforcement, law enforcement at the local level, having support from federal agents are helping with the door-to-door type search, the people manning the phones for any tips that are coming in. But it appears they have a lot of questions. They have a process for trying to work through information, but they don't have anything specific. There was a question asked about, has anything been found that might be of value, like shedding of clothing, which we sometimes see in criminal offenses where people try to change what they're wearing, aware that there are cameras. They say nothing like that has happened in this case that they were prepared to talk about. So that is a question mark. So it really could come down to using cell phone data, which takes a considerable amount of time, assuming the person of interest had a cell phone on his person. Could that help them try to hone in? That's long, painstaking work. Could it be that this new proximity person, as I've been describing it, someone who may be unknown to the person of interest or a friend or just a casual acquaintance, or we really don't know anything about that person. But if that individual sees himself or a family member and says, go in and talk to authorities and tell your story, maybe that moves the ball here. It could also be that person has nothing to do with this and doesn't know the suspect. We just don't know. So they are casting a wide net. They are doing a grid-like search neighborhood by neighborhood. They provided another kind of map for people in in the local community to encourage them to look at everything from their Ring door cameras or their company business surveillance, or as we've heard them say before, if you drive a Tesla that has cameras on all sides, that could be a source of information. So way more questions than any new developments here.
Yeah, and all of your caveats, Kelly, are so incredibly important. The police chief saying, I wish the videos could speak, underscoring that they are trying to thread all of this together, but clearly don't have the person they believe is responsible for this. And of course, because so many days have passed, this person may have left the state of Rhode Island. Marquise Francis, let me turn back to you on that note. You are there. You are talking to students. You just heard the press conference. How do you think this will be received by the community there at Brown, in Providence, and in the broader Rhode Island state?
Yeah, I mean, another press conference and still more questions than answers. A lot of the people that I've spoken to, they expressed so much frustration. I mentioned at the top that frustration is now turning to anger. Just to go over the timeline really quickly, the chaos ensued on Saturday. Overnight on Sunday, police had a person of interest detained. There was a bit of relief. Then overnight on Sunday, that person was released. And Monday, there was a new person of interest. And now, fast forward to today, we still have no more information about this person of interest besides some enhanced video and an image now. And the people that I spoke to, just the back and forth, they're frustrated. A lot of students, of course, have already left campus, moving a lot of their timeline up, people moving flights just to get out of here because of that unease. But a lot of students haven't been able to. And so this is only adding to that anxiety because there still remains a gunman at large. And I do want to note, we heard Mayor Smiley acknowledge the people and their feelings, but I think it's also pretty telling. The Attorney General, Peter Nerona, said he had no updates. Someone who has been front and center in front of the press decided not to say anything, and it appears as though we still have a long way before we get some answers. Kristen?
All right, Marquise and Kelly, thank you both so much for your reporting and your analysis of the press conference, the big developments that we just heard. We really appreciate it. Coming up, inside the brewing rebellion against House Speaker Mike Johnson, with a House Republican who is bucking leadership, joining Democrats in an effort to force a vote to extend expiring health care subsidies. Keep it right here on Meet the Press Now. Welcome back. We want to turn now to breaking news here in Washington as Republican leadership is facing a result from moderates in the House. It is now all but certain that millions of Americans will see their health insurance premiums skyrocket in the new year. Next hour, the House is set to vote on a narrow health care reform bill that was cobbled together by Republican leadership. It does not include an extension of the Affordable Care Act subsidies, and it has no viable path to pass the Senate. Moderate Republicans are furious after House leadership effectively blocked them from considering ways to extend the Affordable Care Act subsidies as part of today's vote. A handful of those moderates today took the extraordinary step of joining forces with House Democrats in a maneuver to bypass House Speaker Mike Johnson entirely and force a vote to extend those Obamacare tax credits for 3 years. Some of those Republican lawmakers saying their leadership left them no choice.
We exhausted every effort to find an agreement within our conference. If folks chose not to find a path forward, they left us with no option but to sign that 3-year discharge. My view is doing nothing is the worst outcome, and that's why Brian Fitzpatrick, myself, Rob Bresnahan, and Ryan McKenzie signed the discharge.
You know, I believe very strongly in this issue, and you know, we keep getting this number thrown at us that it's only 7% of the population, but for that 7%, this is everything. I know some of those 7%, so I don't even like that narrative.
I will speak to one of those Republicans in just a moment. It's just the latest in a string of recent incidents where House Republicans have openly defied leadership, leaving Speaker Johnson today forced to defend his ability to control this conference. Take a listen.
I have not lost control.
Because this is the third time.
There are look, we have the smallest majority in U.S. history. Okay? These are not normal times. There are processes and procedures in the House that are less frequently used when there are larger majorities. And when you have the luxury of having 10 or 15 people who disagree on something, you know, you don't have to deal with it. But when you have a razor-thin margin, as we do, then all the procedures in the book people think are on the table, and that's the difference.
Amid the House drama, the Senate also remains deadlocked after voting down partisan plans from both parties last week, and little apparent appetite among leadership to forge a compromise.
The Jeffries discharge petition on a 3-year extension of the ACA now has the votes to be discharged. What do you think the Senate will do with that bill if it's sent over in January?
Well, we'll see. I mean, we obviously will cross that bridge when we come to it. I don't expect that they would probably, even if they have a sufficient number of signatures, I doubt they vote on it this week.
The damage has been done no matter what happens, because at this point, Republicans have made it impossible to prevent many Americans from paying more on their monthly premiums on January 1. And Republicans can't even say they tried to stop it.
All of this means an estimated 22 million Americans will see their health insurance premiums double on average in 2026. Joining me now from Capitol Hill is NBC's Melanie Zanona and NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez. Mel, let me start with you on the Hill. There are still some lawmakers and quite frankly some folks at the White House who are saying, well, it's still possible we could get an 11th hour deal here. What's the reality check?
Well, there are still some major hurdles to overcome. First of all, Johnson has 7 legislative days to actually schedule a floor vote in the House on that ACA extension. And because the House leaves on Friday for the holidays, that means they likely won't actually be voting on this until the new year, after these subsidies have already expired. And second of all, this still needs to pass the Senate and be signed into law by President Trump. And as you outlined there, the Senate already rejected a similar proposal earlier this month, with GOP leader John Thune pouring cold water on the proposal once again today. But all of that being said, Kristen, I think the House actually moving on the ACA extension creates an entirely different dynamic for the Senate. And so the hope, at least among supporters of this effort, is that the House actions and movement combined with the pressure from constituents who start to feel the real world impacts of this in the new year could really put some pressure on senators to come together and make a compromise deal. But that is really what's going to need to happen if Congress really is going to address these ACA subsidies.
And talk about this dynamic that's unfolding with some moderate Republicans really turning up the heat on Speaker Johnson, who we just heard there defend his leadership and say that, yes, he still has control of his conference.
Yeah, there has been some real angst and frustration in the Republican ranks, not just with moderates, but really broadly across the conference. But what we've seen with the more moderate Republicans is that they feel like their priorities and needs aren't always listened to, despite the fact that they're the ones who are going to determine whether or not Republicans are in the House majority next year. So some Republicans are still expressing frustration. Others, though, are saying ultimately they did what they needed to do to best represent their districts. And so essentially no hard feelings. Just listen.
Hearing, did he put us in a bad spot? We live and die by our own decisions. So he made his decision, we made ours.
He's got to deal with 219 personalities and viewpoints, including mine. And, you know, I think a lot of times he's able to get there and move the conference. This time he wasn't.
He needs to do better. He needs to allow for a vote that both addresses the short and long-term issues of Obamacare. Republicans need to step up and stop just complaining about the problem, but also provide some solutions to the broken Democrat system.
But as you know, Kristen, this is now the 3rd time that a discharge petition has succeeded in the House under Johnson's watch, which is just a remarkable act of defiance and rebellion here in the House, which is why Johnson is so defensive right now, insisting he has not lost control of the House, noting he does have a historically tight margin. This is bound to happen, but no doubt the frustration and angst is boiling, especially as we get closer to the midterms.
And Mel, you take me to my next point, because, of course, if this does not get resolved, this is going to be the centerpiece of the midterms, right? How would it play for each party?
That's exactly right. I mean, Democrats are already signaling they're planning to make this a political cudgel in the midterms if they fail to actually extend the Obamacare subsidies. And moderate Republicans have warned that they think they're going to lose their seats if Congress doesn't act, which potentially could cost Republicans the entire majority. So no doubt health care is going to take center stage in the 2026 midterms, along with the general issue of affordability. Increasingly, though, we're hearing Republicans speaking out and saying President Trump needs to do more to address the issue to affordability. He can no longer just dismiss it as a Democratic hoax. Kristen.
All right, Melanie Zanona from Capitol Hill. Thank you so much. Gabe, let me head over to you at the White House. Let's pick up on that final point by Mel. This idea that from the perspective of Republicans, President Trump hasn't necessarily been as engaged as they would like him to be in this process. What are your sources telling you? Will he get engaged at the 11th hour? We're literally heading into the 11th hour as we speak. Or is this something he's going to pick up in the new year?
Well, hey there, Kristen. Look, President Trump at this point appears to be happy to let Speaker Johnson take these arrows, right? When you talk to White House officials, and we heard from Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, earlier this week, essentially saying that, yes, that the president will be in consultation with Republicans as this process moves forward. But really, when you speak with White House officials, they really do try and change the subject here, that the president in the new year will do his best to try and lower health care costs. They switch to the idea of the president disliking Obamacare and having to find some fix for that, although they haven't offered an exact plan for this. And this is a subject that we expect to even hear from the president tonight, talking about lowering costs for Americans. But you're right, Kristen, he has not gotten engaged in this process, and he appears to be letting the messiness here fall at the feet of Congress, and specifically House Speaker Mike Johnson.
Gabe, follow up on that point, if you would. Flesh out a little bit more. What are you anticipating the president will talk about tonight? What do you think his tone's going to be? He's going to be talking about the economy. We just heard him talking about that in Pennsylvania. What exactly do you think we'll hear?
Well, Kristen, you know as well as anybody, the president is a showman. He knows the significance of a prime time address, 9 p.m. Eastern, in front of millions of viewers. And he wants to use this megaphone, according to White House officials, to really tout what his administration views as his successes of his second term so far. He was actually asked about this a short time ago on the tarmac as he was returning from a dignified transfer ceremony. Let's listen to what he said.
Well, I think the message this evening is we inherited a mess, and we've done a great job, and we continue to, and our country is going to be stronger than ever before very soon.
So certainly, Kristen, this all comes as the president is facing backlash over his handling of the economy. A new poll out today from NPR, PBS, Marist says that only 36% of Americans approve of his handling of the economy. That backs up other recent polling that we've seen so far. So certainly the administration viewing this as a chance to take back the narrative, even though his message on affordability so far has been muddled, Kristen.
And Gabe, quickly before I let you go, Vice President J.D. Vance was in battleground Pennsylvania yesterday. Of course, President Trump was just there last week. Is this a preview of things to come? President Trump has said he's going to be out on the campaign trail in 2026. Will the vice president be out there with him?
Well, look, we keep hearing from the White House that, yes, the president will be out there selling his economic policies to Americans. We have yet to see that, at least on a large scale so far. But when it comes to being a messenger, and the question of whether Vice President Vance may be a better messenger than the president on the issue of affordability, look, White House officials view President Trump as the best messenger for his policies. However, he does tend to go off script, and he has over the last several weeks, referring to this issue of affordability as a Democratic hoax. There is some acknowledgement within Republicans, within White House officials, that it is an issue they're going to have to start talking about. Will be interesting to see exactly how he threads that needle tonight and whether he veers off script in this high-stakes address in front of millions of people here at the White House, Kristen.
It will indeed. We'll be listening closely. Gabe Gutierrez, thank you so much for joining us from the White House. Joining me now is Republican Congressman Mike Lawler of New York. He was one of the 4 Republicans who signed on to that discharge petition to force a vote on a 3-year extension of Obamacare subsidies. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Kristen.
So let's start right there. Your decision to sign on to this discharge petition. What is the exact message that you are trying to send?
Well, look, after the shutdown that Democrats engineered for 43 days, I sat down in a good faith bipartisan effort to come up with a compromise and to extend the ACA tax credits, the enhanced premium tax credits, with reforms. We put forth 2 bills and tried to work with House Republican leadership to allow for an up or down vote. And unfortunately, after a long back and forth. We just could not get to an agreement within our conference to move it forward. And so I and Brian Fitzpatrick, Ryan McKenzie, and Rob Bresnahan really were left with no alternative but to sign the 3-year clean extension to force a vote and to actually advance legislation forward so that ultimately we could get a bipartisan compromise. And I do believe if the bill comes to the floor, not only will it pass, but it'll give the Senate the ability to come back with a bipartisan compromise and actually get something passed into law.
Just to be very clear, if that bill comes to the floor, you will vote yes on the broader bill to extend Obamacare subsidies for 3 years, Congressman?
Yes.
And the fact that it can't come to the floor immediately, that's my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong. In other words, there's a 7-day period, effectively means that these Obamacare subsidies are going to expire. Is that how you see it? Is that imminent at this point?
Well, look, even if we were able to pass it this week, and we are pushing for a vote this week, we have asked Speaker Johnson to put the bill on the floor, and we are trying to work, through this process to get a vote before we leave. But even if it passed this week, it would still then require the Senate to move. And the Senate just voted this exact measure down last week. So it's going to require bipartisan compromise, which has been my point from the start, and why, I really did not want to sign this 3-year discharge, because I don't want a messaging bill. I want a lawmaking exercise. I want it to pass and become law. And I know it's going to require reforms, and, inclusive of income limits. Somebody making $600,000 should not be subsidized for their health care. It's going to require insurance reforms. Kristen, remember, since Obamacare took effect, healthcare premiums have skyrocketed 96%, and insurance company profits have exploded by 2,000%. All right, so they continue to make, billions upon billions of dollars, and yet everybody's health insurance premiums continue to rise. There needs to be real reform of the insurance companies. It's part of the reason why I've pointed out, for instance, United Healthcare owns one of the largest providers in the country. That should not happen. Insurance companies should not be owning providers. There's a clear conflict of interest. So we have to get to the big root cause of why healthcare premiums are spiking.
And Congressman, before we get into that, the nitty-gritty about that, let me just, House leadership is still planning to vote on their health care plan with no extension of the Affordable Care Act. Just to be very clear, the Affordable Care Act subsidies, are you planning to vote no on that piece of legislation?
No, I will be voting yes on that bill because it actually starts to enact some important reforms. For instance, PBM reform and PBM transparency, associated health plans, which will allow small businesses, self-employed individuals to be able to pool together and purchase insurance at a lower rate. CBO has already scored it and said it would reduce health insurance premiums across the country by 11%. So there's actually some really important reforms there that should advance forward.
But Congressman, doesn't voting for the bill that's going to go to the floor undercut your broader effort to get a bipartisan piece of legislation passed through both chambers?
We went to the Rules Committee. We put amendments forward. They were not ruled in order. That is why I signed the 3-year discharge to force a vote on the ACA premium tax credit extension. So we are doing this dual track. I'm not giving up the fight here. I have, bucked my own leadership to force a vote. And that is the tool that was available to me when I couldn't get consensus out of our majority.
So let me ask you about leadership. You were seen speaking with Speaker Johnson on the House floor. He described your conversation as intense fellowship. Is that how you would describe it? What did you say to him specifically, Congressman?
Listen, I'm Irish, Italian, Catholic from New York. I'm blunt, if nothing else. And, we had a very direct conversation, the group of us. Look, I like Mike Johnson very much. We have a very good relationship. He has an impossible task of managing 219 other personalities, myself included, and trying to pull together 218 votes for every bill. And sometimes you're just not going to be able to reach an agreement. This is one of the few instances where that has happened. And so I and Brian and Ryan and Rob did what we had to do on behalf of our constituents, our districts, to force a vote. And again, we're going to agree to disagree, but we obviously are working to advance this, and we're going to continue the dialogue with the Speaker on how to address this issue, that it actually becomes law, which is what I'm most interested in.
And do you have confidence in Speaker Johnson, Congressman?
I do. He's done a great job. And look, people can agree or disagree on an issue. He is doing his level best. He has been nothing but honest and forthright with me. And even if, I'm blunt and direct, the bottom line is I'm focused on finding a solution on an issue that matters. That has no bearing on my relationship with him.
And Congressman, you are mapping out what you see as the core problems of Obamacare. And the root question remains, why hasn't the president, why haven't Republican leadership put forward a plan to actually replace Obamacare before now? Should it have been proposed when the president first took office again, for example?
Well, again, we are working through this process. We have a bill on the floor today that is starting the process of reforming this system. I'm not interested in repeal and replace. I want to fix the problems. And when you look at some of the problems within the system, it is primarily driven by the insurance companies. Remember, Kristen, they're the ones that wrote Obamacare. They're the ones that worked with Democrats to write that law. And so when you see the fact that they have increased their profits by 2,000% over these 15 years, and meanwhile, everybody's health insurance premiums continue to spike, that's a problem. And by the way, Kristen, even if we pass this extension of the enhanced premium tax credit, we're only talking about 7%. So the other 93% continue to see their health insurance premiums skyrocket because this system is broken. That is why we are going after real reforms on PBMs, real reforms on allowing for associated health plans. We need catastrophic coverage. We need to allow purchase across state lines. We need to deal with workforce issues. Yeah. We have a shortage of doctors and nurses. That really is at a core of why people can't get access in many parts of the country. So there's a lot of work ahead, and I am focused on what we can substantively do in a bipartisan way to get that done. It's not going to be fixed overnight, but that's why, to me, this is dual track. The ACA extension on the enhanced premium tax credit with reforms coupled with larger reforms for the whole system.
All right, Congressman Mike Lawler, thank you so much, as always, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Kristen.
And we have an important programming note now. I will be joining NBC's Tom Yamas tonight as part of our special coverage of the president's primetime address at 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on NBC News Now. Coming up, President Trump on a war footing with Venezuela, ordering a blockade of certain oil tankers and designating the Venezuelan regime a foreign terrorist organization. Welcome back. President Trump is taking a major step, dramatically escalating his pressure campaign against the Maduro regime in Venezuela. In a post on social media announcing he is, quote, ordering a total and complete blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers going into and out of Venezuela. It comes a week after U.S. forces seized a sanctioned oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela that the administration says was transporting oil to Iran. In the same social media post last night, the president also saying he was designating the Venezuelan regime as a foreign terrorist organization, though it remains unclear what exactly he means by the Venezuelan regime. Joining me now is NBC News senior national correspondent Courtney Kube. Court, thanks for being here. What is the very latest, and what do you make of this oil blockade. It has raised so many more questions about the overall strategy.
Yeah, so this appears to be the next step in the economic pressure of this campaign, right? We saw the military piece. Now we're seeing the economic piece that started with the tanker last week. And now, even if the U.S. doesn't even seize another tanker, they've put out this threat, and now that could have the effect of having these tankers not go out of port. That would have a huge impact on the Venezuelan economy, and we've already heard some reports that Venezuela may now have their Navy start escorting these ships so that they can move safely. The big question is, will President Trump actually go after these tankers? About 40% of those that leave Venezuela are under some sanction. That could be a huge number of tankers and a huge logistical undertaking for the U.S.
And in terms of the logistical undertaking, Court, do we have any sense who is assisting the U.S. with this effort in terms of who exactly is doing this blockade?
So if there's a huge military presence there that could be involved in sort of the physical presence of the blockade. But if they want to do this legally, so that is as a law enforcement action, then they would use the Coast Guard like we saw last week. But the Coast Guard, it's a very elite unit that was involved last week, and there's only so many of them. If we're talking about potentially one or two of these every couple of days, I don't know that they would have the resources for that.
I had asked last week if some of these actions should be viewed as a step toward war. Administration officials told me absolutely not. And yet there's no doubt all of this, each of these steps are an escalation.
Yeah, and it's absolutely a pressure campaign. And what's remarkable is initially this was all about drugs, stopping the flow of drugs, right? Yeah. Well, it's been very widely proven that that was cocaine, and it was going primarily to Europe, into West Africa, not to the United States. Then it became, this is about pressuring Maduro, getting him to step down. And then we just heard a third reason today for this from President Trump. He just spoke moments ago and said that he wants the oil, that Venezuela has U.S. oil and the U.S. wants it back. So we now have three different reasons that the U.S. is engaged in this pressure campaign. And
Court, just finally, does the president need congressional approval if he wants to take any further steps?
No, unless it is, the language in that Truth Social is a little bit scary because he talks about a full naval blockade, but then he goes on to say just against the ships that weren't potentially sanctioned. A full naval blockade, act of war. Absolutely, that would require a declaration of war or a Security Council sanction.
All right, Courtney Kube, as always, thank you for being here. Great to see you. Coming up next, the rocky road ahead for U.S. relations with Canada amid an unprecedented stretch of economic tensions. Canada's ambassador to the U.S. joins me right here in studio after announcing her resignation. You're watching Meet the Press now. Stay with us. Welcome back. As trade tensions between the U.S. and Canada remain high, one of the key trade negotiators from Canada is stepping down. Kirsten Hillman, Canada's longtime ambassador to the U.S., announced last week that she is leaving her post at the end of the year. Her decision coming as President Trump considers potentially withdrawing from the USMCA trade agreement reached by the U.S., Canada, and Mexico under President Trump's first administration, and less than 2 months after the president terminated trade talks with Canada after the province of Ontario ran anti-tariff ads featuring the voice of Ronald Reagan. And Ambassador Kirsten Hillman joins me now. Ambassador, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Kristen.
Congratulations on this next step for you. Talk a little bit about this decision. I'm sure it couldn't be an easy one. Why now? Why did you want to step down now?
It is a hard decision. I mean, this job has been the privilege of my life representing my country here in the United States. But I've been here for 8 years. I've been ambassador for 6. And we're moving towards a new phase in our discussions on trade in particular that will probably take a little while, and it just seemed like it was the right time to have a new team in place to see those negotiations through. So tough decision, lots of emotions, but deeply grateful for having served.
You talk about the trade negotiations. Obviously, there have been tensions. Did that factor into your decision to step down at this point?
No, it didn't. It didn't. When Prime Minister Carney came into office in the spring, we talked a little bit about me and my future. He asked me to stay on, and I said I would, but that I didn't want a whole another 4-year term. That was just too long after having been here for quite some time. And normally terms are only 3 to 4 years, so 6 is already longer than usual. I was happy to be here for a little while, but it was always the plan to transition to a new ambassador.
Given the trade tensions right now, Ambassador, how do you assess the current relationship between the United States and Canada now versus when you first took your position?
Oh, that's a very good question. So I came to the U.S. during the first negotiations, the renegotiation of the NAFTA. And people might recall at the time, you know, it was quite tumultuous. Mm-hmm. There were questions as to whether or not the agreement would be ripped up. We made it through. And in my opinion, with an agreement that is very strong, that's led to 25% increased trade between our three countries. So it's successful. The facts are that it's successful. This time, you know, we're happy to have another look at it, make sure it's fit for purpose, but feel like it's important not to reconsider the fundamentals, because the fundamentals are working well.
Well, speaking of USMCA, I want to play you a little bit of what President Trump has said about it and get your reaction on the other side. Let's take a look.
And you also talk about the USMCA and what you're thinking about renegotiating that with the automakers.
Well, we're you know, that's just an ongoing thing. It expires in about a year, and we'll either let it expire or we'll maybe work out another deal with Mexico and Canada. But look, Mexico and Canada have taken advantage of the United States, like just about every other country.
Do you think the USMCA can survive, Ambassador?
I do. I think it can survive because it's the right thing for all three countries, but it's the right thing for America. Canada is your biggest customer. You sell more to us than China, the UK, France, and Japan combined. So you put all those countries together, that's 1.7 billion people. We're 40 billion people, and we buy more from American manufacturers than all of them combined. It is in the interest of the United States to keep free and open trade with Canada, and the USMCA is the cornerstone of that. It's the foundation upon which that's based. So I think that those facts are what are going to get us through.
Big picture, how do you think the U.S. and Canada can turn the temperature down? Do you think it's headed in that direction?
I do think we can turn the temperature. Actually, I already think the temperature has turned down. I think that Prime Minister Carney and the President have a good rapport. I'd say they have a collegial relationship. They just spent 45 minutes talking together with President Sheinbaum just after the FIFA draw, but 2 hours sitting side by side at the FIFA draw, talking about, you know, soccer, obviously, but many other things. They have a good, solid relationship. That doesn't solve all of the challenges, but it certainly helps. And I do think that we will make our way through with open lines of communication, not just with the president, but with a lot of his advisors that are close to him, who I see as committed to helping us work this through.
Finally, can you tell us what's next for you?
Well, first of all, I'm going to take a little bit of a break. I'm leaving in February, and so I'm here for a while still. I'm going to take a bit of a break, just consider my next steps, visit my parents, who are elderly, and I've seen less of than I would have liked to. So it's some of that kind of thing, and then consider my next steps. But I'm excited to be moving on. But I'm also kind of nostalgic because there's nothing that's going to come near the honor of representing my country and Canadians here in Washington.
Well, we wish you all the best. We wish you a wonderful holiday season, and we really appreciate your stopping by to talk to us about all of this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. We are back tomorrow with more Meet the Press Now. There is more ahead on NBC News Now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.